People ask me all the time what my favorite exercise is. And so I'm going to tell you the secret and it'll change your life. It's going to be the lunge, or something that looks like a lunge. Here's why. We're dealing with a lot of this as physical therapists and even strength coaches at this point. This is the position of work performance for most people. As I'm sitting here, we know what happens. We know that the front side of the hips, or those hip flexors, can tend to get a little tight. The tissue that's along the top of the thighs, even across the knees, can tend to get a little tight. We know that the glutes turn off. We know the core tends to turn off. If we have a bit of slouching in here, we compress the diaphragm and it changes our breathing pattern. Those are all things that are negatives, and we try to do the exact opposite of that in most of our rehab because, again, this is probably a negative position, and this obviously robs us of a lot of functionality. So what we have to do in order to fix a lot of common complaints, we want to put you in something that looks opposite of that. Now, I am no Cirque du Soleil athlete. I cannot do a back bend to save my life. That's not what I'm asking. What we got to do is figure out, how do we get people out of this position? And I think that this is so important that anybody that comes to me with a hip, knee, back issue, you're going to get some sort of dynamic mobility that puts you into a lunge position. If you come in and take one of our fitness classes at our CrossFit gym next door, there's going to be something into a lunge pattern in every single dynamic warm-up. This is very intentional. This is trying to undo all the things that most of us are doing to ourselves. Even if you say, hey, I don't sit that much. It's like, well, when you drive, if you work, I'll tell you what, since COVID, I've been certainly spending more time sitting with some of my work tasks than I was before. So it's something that we all are going through, and sometimes we just have to remind ourselves to undo it. So first off, get out of that damn chair, right? So if I think about those hip flexors, they're gonna come down and kind of wrap into that inside. So that if I take this leg and bring it back here, it's gonna hopefully kind of wind up that hip flexor a little bit more. We're gonna get some tissue tension. If we also just think about like muscle groups, that's fine. We got quads, you know, we obviously got like the knee and the patellar tendon, we got hamstrings, we got our IT band. The IT band, the way we test for an IT band is we put you more or less into a lunge position, drape you off the table or in a sideline position. And if it's tight, the leg kind of kicks out. So as long as I just start moving you into this position more often, and yes, we can do some foam rolling or some voodoo floss or like some massage work or something like that beforehand, just to make sure that these layers are potentially sliding past each other better. But the reality is we just got to get in those positions more often. Compare some of this positioning even to, or this more like dynamic type of movement compared to just like a static stretch. Static stretch, you're just tugging on tissues. I would rather get you in a position that lengthens the tissues that are tight and activates the muscles that are maybe not doing so much or deactivated, or you could call it weak if you wanted to. But let's start off with just putting you into a lunge position. So I'd take a big step out and really get that leg back. And what I can do from here, if I just kind of sunk into our typical hip flexor stretch, like nothing's really working, I'm tugging on this, I'm tweaking my back, some other things are happening. If I really get up here and try to activate that back leg, so I tighten that quad a little bit, I take this knee and I actively press it out, and then I try to even squeeze the glute on this elongated side, suddenly things are really, really happening. So we have a bunch of different variations. We have our basic Spider-Man stretch, or that elbow to instep stretch. We can get here and work on this thoracic rotation with like a little bit of rotation through the thoracic spine and trying to reach up towards the ceiling, giving some closed chain shoulder stability here. I can even kind of push up and get a little hamstring stretch, but more or less I need to spend some time in this position. What I can also do from a very basic perspective, if you're like, oh, that's a lot of stretch, what if you just came down on the ground, you can pad your knee if you need to, and I just got nice and tall, and I just squeeze my butt. And as soon as I squeeze this butt cheek, I get a big stretch right here, even though you don't see me leaning into this thing like crazy. Because all it's doing is it's turning this on, turns this off a little bit, and allows this muscle to relax. So this would be like the easiest version. What I showed you is more that dynamic piece that we do all the time, obviously switching legs. And then from an activation standpoint, even just getting into a lunge, and a good lunge, I'm going to say is from the side, so you can see me. That knee is directly below the hip, which is directly below the shoulder. It's directly below the ear. So we're going to be nice and tall, and we're just going to go up and down. And as I do this, I'm driving through this front heel. I'm driving through that toe. This glute is squeezed. I'm squeezing this glute, I'm working this quad and stretching through that anterior chain, quad, IT band, TFL, all that tissue that's across my knee. And again, I'm activating here, 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 here specifically, and everything is working. So next time you ask, oh man, I'm sitting too much, what should I do? Just get into that half kneeling or lunge position, squeeze your butt a little bit, and see what happens.